With Alex Kenjeev, president of O'Leary Ventures. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thank you, Merella.
Let's talk about this income splitting plan. The parliamentary budget officer saying, look, $2.2 billion, that is the loss in revenue for the government. What are your thoughts on the estimate?
No surprises here, Merella. In fact, I would say that this report shows that the income splitting plan is going to do exactly what it was designed to do, which is to put a little bit more money into the pockets of relatively well-off families while actually encouraging a wider gender gap. To see what I mean, just consider how income splitting works for a second. In our economy, of course, the more money you make, the higher your tax rate that you pay. But if you have, let's say if you have two spouses and one earns more than the other, well, what if you could take some of that higher earning spouse's income and transfer it over to the lower income earning spouse? You would then, of course, reduce the overall tax rate paid by that couple because you'd be paying less tax at the high rate and more at the lower rate. Well, it doesn't take a very fancy report to show that this policy will, of course, benefit those families for whom the first spouse's income is the highest and where the gap between those two spouses is the widest. I find it particularly concerning that the parliamentary budget officer predicts that this will probably remove about 14,000 full-time equivalent jobs from the labor force. That, of course, being because the incentive to work an additional hour goes way down for that lower earning spouse once the income splitting has been applied to their tax return.
So, Alex, what would have been a better way of doing it where more people would benefit? Because obviously we've heard the estimate that only 15% of Canadians will reap the benefit of this particular plan, and that leaves 85 out. So what would have been a better way to go about this?
Well, the question, every tax policy is going to benefit some portion or another. You can't always avoid that, or it's very difficult to do. The question is, which portion do you want to benefit? In this case, they're actually encouraging lower earning spouses to stay out of the workforce. So it's probably the worst way to target this type of cut. This type of income tax cut. If you ask me, I would have stayed away from income splitting entirely, keep the government out of this type of regressive social engineering, and just give a blanket tax cut to the lower earning families who need it the most.
All right. I also want to talk today very quickly about the mortgage rate from the Bank of Montreal, offering that 5-year fixed rate mortgage at 2.79%. Were you surprised to see this cut, and do you think other banks will follow?
Not surprised at all, and yes, I do think other banks will follow. While this rate may be unprecedented, the pattern is not unprecedented at all. That pattern being, of course, that the banks will eventually follow a rate cut or increase by the central bank, the Bank of Canada. In this case, we saw a central bank rate cut about 6 weeks ago to the tune of 0.25%. And so now we're starting to see that key lending rate trickle down into the rest of the economy, including mortgages. For those viewers at home, I think this is a good reminder that when it comes to your mortgage, it's never a good idea to just sign on that dotted line. You should always shop around. There are deals out there. In fact, while BMO may be the lowest of the big banks, I've seen rates out there as low as 2.59% from some of the smaller lenders. Those small differences can add up to tens of thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your mortgage.
All right, good to know. We have Alex Kenjeev, president of O'Leary Ventures, taking stock with us today. Thanks, Alex.